what they call the 7 mountains, or these are the 7 spheres of influence, right? So it's church, government and politics, sports, media, entertainment, health, family and social services, and education, right? These are the things that tell us how to think. So if you want to change the world, what you have to do is you have to start equipping young people when they're 4, 5, and 6 years old to go into those spheres of influence and change.
Welcome to the Awesome Black Dad Show, where our goal is to give life to stories of fathers in a way that empowers and encourages dads to be a better version of themselves. Today's guest is Mr. Destry Wilborn, the executive director and founder of the Men of Purpose Journey to Self-Discovery program. Destry is a Chicago native with over 20 years of experience as a Chicago police detective. In addition to serving his hometown, Destry spent 10 years in the Chicago public school system as a wrestling coach, where his passion for helping young boys successfully transition into manhood with a clear sense of identity and purpose was ignited. Destry believes that the dedication and commitment are key components to helping young men discover their purpose, deploy their gifts, and develop a vision for their lives. I introduce to you today Mr. Destry Wilborn. Welcome, Destry.
What's going on, boss?
Glad to have you, man. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Destry is a pretty unique name. I'll tell you the first thing that comes to mind when I when I first heard your name. So the first thing that came to mind was destroy, right? So my first question to you is, does Destry have a meaning?
To somebody somewhere, I'm sure it does. All right.
Yep.
I always answer this question 2 ways. Generally, old white folks know the name because it was a movie called Destry Rides Again. Except Destry in the movie, Destry was his last name. His name was Tom Destry. I think Audie Murphy played it in the 20s, and I think they remade it in the 30s with James Stewart. Okay. And it was a guy, he was a sheriff, but he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, He cleaned up the West. He didn't carry a gun. He'd go to the bar and he'd order milk. So old white folks know the name Destry. Destry Rides Again. But that ain't where it came from. My sister had a crush on a guy in the 2nd grade named Destry. My father wanted to name me Maurice. So somehow...
So Destry won.
Destry won. My middle name is Maurice. There it is.
Okay. Well, everybody won then, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Kind of, sort of. So, I mean, because I was going to ask, like, what if it was some variation of destroy, like, what do you think you were sent here to destroy? But it didn't go that way. So let's move on. Yeah. So let's talk purpose, right? So what do you believe that you were put here to do?
Me personally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always say that there's a difference between your passion and your purpose. All right.
And we'll get into that.
Right.
So let's just,
now, for me, part, because there can be many facets to your purpose, but the part of my purpose is to cure the ills of what we believe concerning fatherlessness. So I think just based on the capacity that I've had in my relationships, right? It's simply dealing with filling the gap. So being a father to the fatherless and teaching young men the importance of being that thing.
Okay. And so how did you find that said purpose? Like, how did you find it? Did you kind of always know it?
No. I don't want to sound deeper. Here's the truth.
That's what I want.
You don't find your purpose. You discover it.
Okay.
And here's what I mean by that. Everything you ever need, I always say, is already on the inside of you waiting to be discovered, right? No one has ever found oil, and no one has ever found gold. They simply discovered what was already there, right? So everything has a hidden instruction on the inside of it already. An apple seed automatically becomes an apple. A watermelon seed becomes a watermelon. An acorn becomes an oak tree. There's nothing extra you have to do to it. Well, there are some things you have to do to it, but everything that it needs to become what it's supposed to become is already on the inside of them. If you put it in the right environment, the thing that it's supposed to become, it will naturally become. You and I can sit an apple seed on this table for the next 50 years. Ain't nothing gonna happen. But if you put it in its right environment, the thing that's supposed to become, it will naturally become. So I think discovering your purpose is simply tapping that thing on the inside that is already there and let it manifest.
So in that, like, discovering that, do you think that discovery is a lonely journey, or do you have to surround yourself with people that'll help you discover that, or is that something that you need to do by yourself?
I think it's twofold, because many times the things that you're trying to figure out, you don't even know you're figuring them out as you're figuring them out, right? So wherever you are in life, there are some things that were happening with you at 9 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old that prepared you for this moment. At 9, 10, and 15, you had no idea what those small things meant, right? But now you can look back. So it's like connecting the dots. So you can look at experiences that you've gone through when you were an adolescent or a teenager that shaped and molded you and prepared you for this thing right here. That back then you had no idea. So a piece of it is the grand weaver or the grand designer knows what's going on. So he strategically puts you in places for you to grab skills that you'll need a little bit later. Right. But I think when it comes to honing that skill, you know, we say iron sharpens iron. Right. You need to be surrounded by people. What I say is kind of, it's against conventional wisdom. Here's what most people say, right? You discover the thing that you're supposed to do, you figure it out, and first thing we do is go print up some business cards and some flyers, and we start handing it out, say, oh, this is what no. When you finally discover the thing that you were born to do, I suggest going to find someone who's doing that thing already, and then serve them. And then it is in your service to them that will launch you and put you in positions to receive things that you aren't qualified to receive simply because you were serving somebody else.
Now that's very interesting. So when you get into the space where, like, you've discovered this purpose, I don't imagine, is it something that you know immediately, or is it like, and this question is to you as it pertains to your particular purpose, like, did you know that immediately, or was it something that kept having, you had to be pricked a couple of times to say, all right, this is the direction that I've been called, or where I find I have the most gifts and where I can serve the most?
I think it's it takes a lot of pricking, because I think a few things. One, you know, getting back to the intro, like, I coached wrestling for a long time, like 15 years in high school, and did maybe another 6 or 7 years in a park district level, right? But it was, at the time, I'm just coaching wrestling. That's all I'm doing. But I'm developing relationship with boys. So part of that groomed me to just be able to take on young men and walk with them, right? The second thing is, I tell people all the time, I think people mistake when they say, I know they say, you know, find the thing that you love to do and you'll do it for free. Yeah. That sounds good. But the truth of the matter is, most of the time, the thing that you're purposed to do, you actually hate it.
You hate it. Yeah, I was just telling my wife that.
You stay away from it. I think there's a push and pull, right? Because there's something about that thing that aggravates you so much, you don't even want a part of it. Yeah. So there's this piece that pushes you away up until the point when you can no longer be pushed away, and it draws you to it.
Is it also, like, in some of my experiences, what happens is I feel like there are certain things that we find that come easy to us, and those things we tend, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because it's so easy that it's scary, or we understand that there's a level of accountability that comes with greatness. So once you assign yourself to a particular thing that you're good at, you become accountable for everything that you begin to do in that space and how you move, right? So is it that we're just scared, or is it just we just don't want to do it? What is it about that push and pull that, or is that the thing that we should be looking for? That when you find that thing that you have to keep kind of playing that tug of war with, you might want to write it down and figure out if that's the thing you feel like you have gifts in.
Yeah, because that means it's something on the inside of you that is pulling towards that. Your mind is saying, no, I don't want no part of this, right? And so I think when you find the thing, and later on I'm going to give you, you know, some of these top secret ways that how to figure it out. But when you find that thing, you need to make a mental note. Why do I feel this way about this thing? Right? And because again, all of these things are there's no one answer, right? There's no playbook that can tell you, boom, this is the thing you were born to do. But once you start asking yourself some critical questions, then it kind of puts you on the right track.
Yeah. Is it ever too late to start the journey to finding your purpose?
Oh, never. You as long as you my belief is this: as long as you're living, you haven't fulfilled it yet. So as long as you're still living, that means it's something left that God wants you to do that you haven't done.
Right. So does that mean that if there's an ultimate design in it, was it always meant for as a part of that purpose? Like if you didn't find it until you were, let's say 45, you spent all that time trying to figure out what your purpose is, and then you only have 10 years from that time to really serve in that way. There's no failure in it, right?
No.
Right. Okay.
Never failure. I think part of it is this. And I don't want to get off on a tangent. I always say there's a difference between a vision and a dream. Mm-hmm. A vision, this is why Scripture says, old men will have visions. Old men will have visions, young men will have dreams. Or is it vice versa?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
It sounds about right.
A vision is something that, okay, how can I put it? The vision is never for the visionary, right? Mm-hmm. It says, write the vision, make it plain. Why do you need to write your own vision? You know what it is. Mm-hmm. The vision is never for you. The vision is for the people that have come behind you. This is why you have to write it out so they know what to do, right? Mm-hmm. This is what we always talk about, leaving legacy. Mm-hmm. So a vision is something that you can possibly see fulfilled, right? Mm-hmm. A dream you won't. This is why Dr. King said, I had a dream. Mm-hmm. It's something that he saw. He said, but I won't be around when this thing happens. So the vision is for you, but the dream is something that'll happen, but it's not for you in your lifetime to do.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard it put like that literally in terms of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, right? And what it meant in a literal sense. So that's pretty interesting. I think they're both necessary. Dreams and visions are both necessary. And we have to work towards putting those visions. When it comes to a vision, do we work towards actioning on that vision, or again, are we putting the pieces in place for somebody else to act on those things?
You put the pieces in place, and that's when we talk about like true leadership isn't doing the work. True leadership is equipping other people to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you have a vision, this is why any, I guess, great businessman, any billionaire, millionaire, whatever, any great businessman would tell you, I'm not the smartest guy in my business. Mm-hmm. I'm just smart enough to put the people together to have them do the thing. Right. So I think when we talk about like true leadership and being a visionary, it is simply laying everything out and then allow other people. So when you talk about leadership, that's allowing other people to operate in their gifts. And their gift is serving your gift, and your gift is serving their gift. And together, that's how the vision grows.
Fair. And going through this journey, how much of this was given to you? Did your dad or your mom instill something in you in an early age that that you feel kind of pushed you towards where you are today?
Nope.
Nothing?
Nah.
So do you think it's necessary? Well, I guess obviously not, because that didn't happen for you. So what was your relationship like with your father?
I probably had and I'm going to use my fingers to make the air quotes, a normal relationship.
What is define normal?
Exactly. That's my point. That's why I use the air quotes. Like, when my father passed, and I was maybe 14 or 15. But like, my dad was in the house, mm-hmm. but he was absent. Like, he went to work every day. Mm-hmm. He came home every day. But there was no
wrestling games.
Yeah,
no wrestling tournaments. No wrestling in the back.
Once did my parents ever come to any sporting event, and I played baseball from probably 7th grade through high school. Mm-hmm. Not one game ever. Never came to a wrestling, and I don't even know if I expected them to. And I think here's the truth of the matter: the times that my mother tried to come to my wrestling match, I talked her out of coming. In part because I've been doing it a little while, but I didn't want to be embarrassed. Right? I'm like, it'd be my luck the day she come, I get toe off, and she's like, "Is this what you've been wasting your time doing?" So I think I discouraged her from even coming. Yeah. But like I said, my father was present, but he was absent at the same time. Mm-hmm. So physically present, emotionally unavailable. And that's kind of how I grew up.
And did you ever have, since we talked about the push and pull, did you ever have any push and pull when it came to that relationship as you grew up before he passed? And then after as well, were there regrets that you had, for not having a bond?
No, he and I, we didn't have a contentious relationship. So it wasn't this, we walked around mad. No, there was no contention in it. It was just and I don't even know, now you asked the question, what is normal? But it was my norm. It was my norm that your dad came home, he ate dinner, he went to bed, and got up the next day and went back to work. Right.
Currently where you are today, do you consider that what your dad did at that time to still be normal? Would you still define that as normal? Like, because you don't currently have kids, correct?
No
like
biological
your own, no biological children, right? If in the event you had biological children, is that the normal, like what you would expect to have in terms of your relationship with your kids?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I have a niece. She's 23 now, but she's been with me since she was 1. She's my sister's daughter. And so I raised her, in the house with me as my own. And I look back like I ruined her. And I ruined her because I fathered from my father's perspective. I went to work, I paid the bills, that was enough in my mind. So physically, I'm there. Emotionally, checked out. But I'm at every event she had, so the supportive, so like if there's a big event, I'm there. But that's not what changes or transforms people, right? What would have been more advantageous for her is if I was there daily. If I'm taking her to and from the practices and things like that. So when I say I ruined her, I parented her like a man. And so she a rough girl to get along with because she functions like a man. Ooh. And I'm like, man, I don't even know if you going to get a dude. Or at least a good one. He got to be raggedy to deal with you.
Yeah, but so obviously it sounds like you have these conversations with her. Has she decided to address what it is in that? Like, because I believe that anybody can change if they decide to. And I get that she's been reared in that way, but is there any indication at this point in her life that she wants to change and she wants to work with you to do the same?
Ain't looking good. It's like all of us, like change is hard for everything and everybody, man. Yeah. We like what we like, we know what we know. But I think when she was probably about 19, we had to sit down and have one of those talks because I realized that I had wronged her. Okay. And I had to apologize. I said, listen, I'm sorry. But every decision I've ever made, I made thinking it was the best thing to do. Right. And looking back in hindsight, well, it probably wasn't. See, in my mind, I'll be honest. And this is why I think the balance is so important. This is why you need 2 parents in the house, right? So the way I pushed it was like, it's never good enough. Nothing's ever good enough. Nothing's ever good enough. And I'm like, I want excellence. And I'm not saying you shouldn't push, but what I did was I don't know if I created a unrealistic standard, but in my push, there was never any love to back that up, right? But in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm almost parenting her like I'm coaching one of my kids because I want to push them to the next level. So I need them to dig down deep inside. And she's like, yeah, that's cool, but maybe I'm a girl. Maybe I just need a hug sometime, you know? And so, yeah.
And so do you think that you just weren't emotionally available to be able to do some of those things? Did you notice it? You didn't notice it at the time when you think back? And all of this is just a reflection on how you did it because of what you saw growing up, right? And what you considered to be normal at the time. So go to work, pay the bills, you go to school, and you get good grades, and that's all that really, you do your job, I'm going to do mine. Right? The rest of it, hey, I can't do too much. I
remember one time we had a conversation. She was like, man, why do you work so much? I'm like, boo, it's either work or we sit on the curb, and we can't sit on the curb, so I got to get to work. Yeah. But not, I have, it's funny because if I get a chance to do it over again, I'll do it better. But I've read this thing and I really try and, allow this piece to be one of my cornerstones. But it said, never be so busy living that you forget to make a life. Or never be so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. And so I think a lot of guys, we get caught up in our work.
Yeah. I think that's the way we were socialized, though. It's go to work, provide, right? We get caught up in the provision, and then we've been having this conversation a couple of times in and out of the space on the podcast and in other circles when it comes to emotional intelligence and how we're taught as men to handle certain things, right? And how uncomfortable we are about having some of the smallest, air quotes, quote unquote, emotional conversations, right? When it comes to how we feel in certain situations and how we should handle them. Not only is it uncomfortable, we don't know, most of us just don't know what to do after. So the easiest thing is like, all right, pack me a lunch, I'm going to work.
Right.
I'm going to go do what I know how to do. And then the rest will kind of sort itself out, we hope. But then as we get older, it's not the case.
Because we're generally defined, but this is why when men meet each other and they're conversing, somewhere within the first 3 to 5 minutes, we're going to ask you, what do you do?
Yep.
Because we somehow define our manhood based on what you do for a living.
Yeah.
Oh, you got kids too?
Right.
Okay, but what you do?
Right.
You know.
And by design, I've gotten away from that. Like I've trying to change my way because it's just it doesn't provide me anything in terms of my growth, right? So if we meet each other for the first time and I ask you what you do immediately without learning more about your character, it just lends itself to, okay, the next thing in my mind is like, okay, well, he's a lawyer. How can I use a lawyer? Right. So you're thinking about these things and how to get people in your network opposed to putting people in your space because of the character that they have and the things that they've gone through and the perspectives that they can bring. So I've kind of gotten away from, like, the first day in the Brothers Collective, I kind of got away from, I didn't ask guys their titles on purpose because I did not want to know what it is that you did for a living, because I don't think that that's what should be the definition of who we are. It's a part of it, but it should not be the first thing, right? If I asked you, I didn't learn that you were a police officer until maybe the third or fourth time that I met you, right? And I didn't, up until that point, I didn't even need to know what you did for a day job, right? Because I don't see you. Yeah, you don't know what I do for a day.
Yeah,
right?
I figured G14 classified, man. This some high-speed, low-drag secret squirrel stuff you got going down here. It's the laboratory, man.
Right. And so I'm just getting away from using that as the starting point, because what happens is that when people really get to asking you some really deep questions in terms of who you are, you forget, or you don't know, or you're not ready. Like yesterday, which we'll get into in a minute, your friend that came to the barbecue asked me what's on my bucket list, right? And undoubtedly, there are some things that are on my bucket list that may or may not be on my bucket list, but things that I've thought about that I wanted to do before I died. But at that moment, I didn't have an answer because I'm not used to having that interaction with anybody, so to speak, because you start with, what do you do for a living? You know, that's a good company, blah, blah, blah. And then by that time you move on and now you're asking somebody else the same question. So I think it's very valuable in that sense that we begin to start getting away from societal titles and figure out who we are as men and women.
I like that.
Speaking about the barbecue yesterday, right? So I thought it was really interesting. So there's this story, and I would like for you to tell the story for the audience. You fought a lion cub.
I didn't really fight a lion cub.
I'm sorry,
grabbed me. But I want to wrestle him.
Right. So give us the background to the story.
Before I say that, did you get the clip I sent you?
I did get the clip.
Okay.
I did get the clip. Yeah.
All right. Had the chance to go to. I was in South Africa last year. You know, you can't visit the continent of Africa or go to the country of South Africa and not go on a safari. So one night we'd done. The one where you ride around and, you look at them from the cage. And then the next morning we went to watch them do a feeding. And it was all good. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, y'all got something I can touch, though? So, yeah, we got something for you.
Is that how you got something I can touch?
You want to be hands-on, man.
Okay.
Well,
you want to be hands-on.
Yeah,
let's go.
I've seen lions at the zoo.
Okay.
All right? Mm-hmm. So, now, again, I don't want to be in there with a full-grown lion. Like, nothing that can kill me. But they had like 3 clubs in this little enclosure. I'm like, all right, cool. Let me in the, see what it's like to, be with a cub. So it was an amazing experience. As I mentioned, he started licking my face, but I had a full beard. I was going for my Rick Ross look at the time. So the lion actually bit my face, but it only was able.
Time out. Wait, he actually bit your face, or?
Yeah, but as I pulled away, so he's only able to get hair.
Okay.
So it's cool.
You never was like, okay, get me out of here. You want to?
No harm, no foul. He just, that's the way I saw it.
Okay.
So then he started, sniffing around here under my armpits. I don't know, maybe I didn't have on my deodorant or whatever. And then he kind of bit my chest, and it pinched a little bit, but not so much. I'm like, it was almost.
It is not equivalent to a baby pinch.
No,
right?
it's not. But here's the only way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when I was a kid,
yep,
I was cutting the grass one time, and I saw the little connector to the spark plug is starting to become undone. Mm-hmm. I'm like, cool. Let me push this thing back up. Mm-hmm. Shocked the bejesus out of me. But it was such an exhilarating feeling. I was like, oh my God, I want to do that again. Now, I didn't have the nerve to do it again, but...
Yeah, you're not doing a very good job of explaining why.
I can't explain it, but it was amazing. So the point is this: I want to go back this year. I want to wrestle the lion. That's it. So I've been. It's been like Hulk
Hogan. So you want to
lately.
go back? So you've been warned by the pinch, and you want to go back, and let's be clear. You want to go back and do what? You want to go back and wrestle?
I want to wrestle the lion. Yeah. Okay. You are you an old WWF wrestling fan?
I am.
Okay. I used to love Hulk Hogan.
Uh-huh.
And so I've been doing just like Hulk Hogan. I've been training, saying my prayers, eating my vitamins.
Yeah.
And so I want to. Okay. So again, not a full. I'm not looking to be mauled, but a little challenge would be nice. Something that's maybe.
And you don't want to wrestle Hulk Hogan. That'll be fine. Like you can say, I want to wrestle somebody in WWE.
He's 300 pounds. I only want to wrestle maybe like 85 to 90 pound lion.
I understand
I
that.
can handle
but
that.
Even with Hulk Hogan being 300 pounds, you could tap out. With the lion, by the time you tap out, if you get the chance to tap out, you might be missing an arm, you might be missing a leg, and God forbid, you might be missing a head. Because his mouth, even the lion cub that you showed me in the video, well, he was probably, I don't know, I'll give him 40 pounds maybe, if that's about accurate. His mouth was still big enough to smash your head.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a sunflower seed. Yeah, and none of that is affecting you in any way.
Not yet. but again, part of it could be I wasn't really, like if I was injured, then I could be like, oh no, that was a bad idea. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't really injured, so you like.
Fair, yeah. So the thing is that it takes a certain type of courage to want to go back in the ring with a lion, right? Mm-hmm. I'll say a certain type of courage and a tad bit of stupidity. Crazy, stupid, whatever you want to do.
Whichever adjective we want to use.
Yeah,
okay,
it's one of those, like, not insulting your intelligence in any way, but it's like, why would you want to go back? Like you did it, of all your friends, you're probably at the top. None of your friends, I am sure, has wrestled a lion. Mm-mm. But at any rate, it still takes a certain amount of courage to want to do that, which leads me to my next question. A Chicago police detective. Mm-hmm. And you've been with the Chicago PD for the better part of 20 years, right? Yep. Why a police officer?
Man, I wish I had an answer. Here's the truth. I didn't want to be the police. I was, at the time, I was a history major. I wanted to be a history teacher. And a buddy of mine was going down to take the exam, and he didn't want to go along. He said, hey, why don't you just come down here with me? So I went down, and I got the job. He didn't. That's usually how it works, right?
And now is he a history teacher?
How it worked. No, he actually ended up becoming a police in Evergreen Park.
Okay.
Like 5 or 6 years later. But I'll say this. It is, as a detective, I don't want to get into the part of patrolman, but as a detective, probably the best decision I've ever made, man. And it is, I like to use the term I'm a truth seeker, right? And that's simply what I do. Not, taking simply objective facts, following the evidence. So I love doing it. I love it.
Okay. So from your perspective, what needs to change in order to build a better rapport between the community and the police community with everything that's going on in the world today, right? Just your perspective, not necessarily the conversations that you have, with your colleagues, but what you know about the black community and then what you know about the police community. And I'm sure you've thought about it, like what is the determining factor in terms of us getting better, to get better as a whole?
I think the police need to do a better job of being humans, right? Mm-hmm. Simply speaking to people, There was a time probably when we were kids, you knew the police in your neighborhood, they got out their car, you waved, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And there was also this officer-friendly program we used to do, but I think the police need to do a better job of simply being human beings, understanding your plight as a human. I think the black community needs it. There's a stigma attached, and I think we do a horrible job as parents putting fear in our kids. And so it is my experience when I was in patrol and I wore a uniform. It was my experience that 99% of the time, if I came across a black mother with her child, she always says to the child, if you're bad, I'm going to have the police come get you. So we put this fear in our kids from early on. 99% of the time, if I came across any other race, which is generally white or Asian, right? They'll always say, if you're in trouble, go find the police. So this is our interaction. So they teach their kids, hey, if you're in trouble, these are the people who come help you.
Right.
We generally teach our kids, if you mess up, they're coming to get you. Right. But also, probably psychologically, the kid sees in his own neighborhood how the police are handling people.
Yes. This
is the guy that came and got my daddy in the middle of the night. This is the guy that took the door off the hinges and took cousin Bobo away.
Yeah.
So not just the fear that the parents put in, but things that they visually see themselves, but I always try to explain to people, I have been to police 22 years. I've been black 46. I've been black a lot longer than I've been to police. So I can identify with being black, and there'll be a point that I'm not going to be the police, but I'm still going to be black.
Right.
And so I think once it is very core, regardless of race or ethnicity, you break everybody down to a human being and you roll from there.
Because I do personally, and I've expressed it on here before as well, I think part of my challenge is really trying to express to my boys, I feel like as black men, we don't have an opportunity to have a bad day, right? We always have to smile and present ourselves in a less aggressive, for lack of a better word, manner, so that we can effectively make it home to whatever degree that means, right? So how do you raise young boys to become young, confident, ambitious men when there's this idea, and it's not really an idea, it's the things that you see when you have to explain to them the Trayvon Martin stories, and all of the things that they see that we have no control over for the people that are supposed to protect them. Not talking about the people that are already out there to get them, that don't have a responsibility to protect them, but the people that have a responsibility and accountability to protect them are afraid of them as well, right? And so you don't have the room to not have a bad day, and we all deserve that,
right?
And so it's a struggle for me, just watching some of the things that they do and telling and instilling a certain level of fear in them, so they won't do this particular thing. Because it's so. I'll use this as an example. You recently jumped out of an airplane. Typically, what we would tell our kids is like, don't do that because there's a greater probability of you hitting the ground and dying than you staying 2 feet on the ground. Right. And so when we begin to instill in our kids the things that they should steer away from because of that, it's like I really don't like that, and I'm working towards trying to figure that out. And it's interesting that you said that people teach different ways of trying to of what you're supposed to do with their kids. Like the white folks will tell their kids if something happened, call the police. And, so that's my struggle.
Here's the thing, though. The truth of the matter is, it's unfortunate that we have to, but we have to. And so to pretend that we don't have to, you're going to do a disservice to your kids.
Right.
I'm also a co-owner in a dog training business, Mr. K9 Dog Training. And we have a program called No More Excuses, right? And part of it, and the reason we created that program is we say, okay, for anyone with a pit bull, we'll train your dog for free. All you got to do is show up. Mm-hmm. But why do we do that? Because the pit bull has a stereotype.
Yes.
And so we tell our clients, listen, you don't have the luxury of making the mistakes that a guy with a German Shepherd can make.
Right.
You just don't.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the luxury of being free with your dog. You just don't. So you have to go, because you are the owner of this dog, mm-hmm. this particular breed, you have to go above and beyond to show people that this isn't the image of this dog. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but we can't keep pretending that we don't.
Right.
So no different than a black man. You can't get away with the things that someone else can get away. Is it unfair? Yeah, it's unfair, but you got a bad rap right now.
Yeah.
So what do? You have to change the way you see that, right? So you have to change the way people see you. Mm-hmm. So we have to change the image of the pit bull so people can start saying, okay, well, maybe they ain't baby killers. Maybe they are nice dogs. Maybe this, right? But that can't happen unless I acknowledge that I don't have the same privileges, I don't have the same freedoms, unfortunately may not even have the same rights. Mm-hmm. So I can't do the things others can do.
Right. And I think that's clear. I think that a lot of the arguments that are going around now, and I've said it before, I think this country lacks empathy, mm-hmm. right? And so I think what's going on is people try to tell us that that's not true. Like there is this stigma that we're not stigma and stereotype that we're not all too responsible for, right? But we're 100% responsible and accountable for changing that narrative for something that we didn't create, right? Somebody else created that story, and it causes lives to be lost, and we're responsible for changing that. Just like the owner of the pit bull, it's like if you decided to go and buy a pit bull, then you have to do these things to protect that pit bull. We're born this way.
Right.
Nobody buying us, So that's the constant back and forth when you're having these conversations with folks, and they don't understand that. I think that's all to some degree we're asking is understand that we have to do completely different things to walk in the same space, in the same room that you're walking in. And so that's a challenge. And it's interesting that you brought up the dog training, because you were saying something yesterday as well that I wanted to bring up. You were saying that in a lot of ways, training your kids is like training dogs is like training kids, right? Mm-hmm. And you were talking about, one of the things that you talked about was that with your dog, you like to train your dog outside of the house in spaces that they're not comfortable. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Because nothing's ever going to happen at home, right? At home, you're safe, you're good. What has to happen is I have to put you in what we call the environmental distractions. Mm-hmm. I have to put you in environments that's going to directly conflict with what you want to do, so I can train you to deal with that environment. Mm-hmm. Once you learn to deal with that environment, I can almost take you anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so even with dogs, I always say, sit means sit, down means down, and stay means stay. I don't care if we're at home, at the park, at PetSmart, at the vet's office. Mm-hmm. If it's one dog around or 50 dogs around, I have to train you in such a way that I almost say that no mistakes will ever happen. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the environmental distractions, I would say your control has to override their desire, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have to put you in environments to stimulate you. So I think I use the example of kids. Mm-hmm. At home, you're 2 or 3 year old piece of cake, mm-hmm. but get them in the store. He pulling stuff off the shelf. He underneath the clothes rack. It's when they're in environments that stimulate them, mm-hmm. we lose our control.
So let's move a little bit away from dog training and say, in that scenario or in that example, what is the suggestion? Like, what do you do if we're getting them out of that environment and we want to, I don't necessarily like the word control, but it does fit in this particular mm-hmm. situation where we want them to act accordingly in spaces where they should, right? What do you do with your kids? Is it take them out to these places and then correct their behavior there? Right. That's what
absolutely.
Okay.
Right, because it's you just have to put them in the environments to stimulate them, then correct them. Then mm-hmm. That's it,
and that's it. Interesting. There's also a lot of stigma and stereotypes associated with Chicago. It's a very violent city, or there's a lot of stuff going on. If all you do is listen to the news, what is your truth about Chicago?
It is probably. Actually, it's funny because I just had this talk at the UN maybe couple weeks ago.
As in United Nations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Went to the United Nations. I got invited to talk about some things dealing with youth and global issues. And I talked about it's probably one of the greatest cities in this country, man. A beautiful skyline, and you got the Magnificent Mile and wonderful lakefronts, and we got the Bulls, and hopefully this year we got a decent Bears team. We still got the Cubs and the Sox. Yeah. So we have some amazing things about Chicago, but we're also the same city that 70 people got shot a few weeks ago. So it's like the like that book, The Tale of Two Cities. The best of times, it was the worst of times. But when you look at the totality of this city, it is a magnificent place. But also, we have to remember that drama sells, right? Drama sells
in any world, any place that you're in. It
exactly.
Does. Yep.
So what do I? So if I'm trying to perpetuate a particular image, that's just what I feed you. That's why we watch television, right? It tells you a vision of what they want you to see. Now, I'm not saying it isn't dangerous. Let's be clear about this. What I am saying is, even when you start looking at, and I'm not excusing this, but we had maybe 600-700 people killed. Yeah, but we're also a city of 3 million people. So when
the law of averages,
right?
Yeah.
So when you look at it, I don't even.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to say. When I talk to people that don't, that aren't particularly from Chicago, that's the first thing that comes to mind. There are people that are literally afraid to come because of what they've seen on the news. I have family members that live, that live out of state. When we say, yeah, you should come and visit, like they've never been here and they're now adults, and it's like, you should come and see the city. It's a great place, and they're like, man, I don't know what I'm hearing, man. Is it really that bad? In my opinion, like I'm originally from the west side of Chicago, and so that's where I grew up, and so I'm no stranger to certain violences and things and stuff that goes on in certain communities, but I also see the greater good in it, and I understand that there are spaces that I don't belong, even as a black man in certain black communities. It ain't for me. It's not where I need to be. Right. And I think that's anywhere. Right. And so when they continue to sell this narrative about that it's that the city is that bad, and again, I'm not dismissing any of the tragedies that happens and any of the people that have lost family members because of said violence. But on a grander scheme, there are a lot of people still dying all over the country as well. And so there's this stigma about Chicago that it's just not a place to be. And it's just based on the narrative that you want to tell. It's still a great city, but I feel like, and some of our negatives are our pluses. Like, so we still are, I would consider us to be one of the most segregated cities in the country.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I still think I consider that a positive instead of a negative, right? Because where else in the country can you go and get authentic? You're 10 minutes away from getting authentic Chinese food. Right? You got Chinatown, and you have these cultures that you can be introduced to without getting on a plane and flying 12 hours or 15 hours. So it's like that segregation, as long as we treat people fairly, it provides a culture for us to learn if you want to learn that. You know what I mean? So it's just really hard. And I always wanted to know what the perspective of
Here's the thing. Your take on, and this is how we also have to look at police brutality, and I'm trying to do an overlap here. But your relatives' take on what they think about the city is based on what they've seen on television. Here's what we also have to understand. Now, I don't want to make this a black and white issue, but it is. A white police officer's take on what a black person is based on what he's seen on television.
Even if he's policing that community?
Because if he's policing that community, who does he more often run into? Police is there to stop crime.
Yeah.
So who does he run into more often? Right. Criminals. So he begins to develop, I don't care how liberal you are. I always tell people this. You could be the most liberal person in the world. Go work at the Cook County Jail for 6 months. Your mentality will change in what you think about people. And so when the police officer comes in contact with people on the very worst day of their life. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
And so you're never, very rarely, but most of the time you're meeting people on their worst day of life. So it's never an ideal situation, right? So you're meeting people at their worst. no different than, I don't want to keep comparing people to dogs. Let's go
No,
back to
that's fine.
dogs.
If
If every pit bull I see, say there are 10,000 pit bulls in the world, I've seen 10. And the 10 I've seen have attacked other dogs. I just believe this is what they do.
Right.
Right? And so all of us, whether we want to believe it or not, we all have unconscious biases based on what the media has told us. And I don't care how, again, liberal you are, all of us, after 9/11, looked at a Muslim sideways when we was in the airport. Because the media gave us an image of, hey, this is what they do. So now you in the airport, you see a guy with a turban on his head, you giving him the side eye. Yeah. You're like, this ain't looking good. Because the media fed you the image that this is what these people are. Right. And whether or not, we could debate whether or not it's intentional or not.
Right.
But it's what it is.
I don't think the intent really matters. I think what happens is the conscious effort to begin to change that within your own self. Right. To know that that's being fed to you and understand the difference. Are you really in danger? Or is it something that is based or rooted in somebody else's truth? Right.
But see, that's and this is where it comes. So I like your point when you start talking about the culture in Chinatown, right? So this is why it's so important to understand others' culture. If you and I, say we're the police, and you and I are talking, and we do what we do. We loud. Yeah. We gonna pump our fists. We gonna hit our hand and the White House. Oh my God, he's getting aggressive. I'm like, no, he's just talking. Right. But culturally, that's what we do. So until you understand other cultures, you're gonna always perceive what they do as wrong based on your limited knowledge of how they function.
Yeah. Be unaware of the biases that you're bringing into a situation. Yeah, and I don't know how you change that in terms of people that have taken jobs to protect different cultures. A lot of people have said that it's probably better suited to have beat cops that are in communities for more than just the time for when they're meeting people at their worst time. You can't meet everybody, but if you begin to meet certain people in the community, those anchors, just like when you go in certain communities, there's a CVS on one corner and a McDonald's on the other. Those are considered anchors in the community. So when you drive through, people that want to move there see those things as being positive beacons or lights in the community that makes you want to move there. I think in every community there's somebody there that has a foothold on the community, understand what's going on, and that Jimmy's not crazy, but Jimmy might be out of balance. He might need medication. So when he's going off, maybe you just need to step away. He ain't gonna hurt nobody. He's just off his meds, right? And so that takes time and understanding and a lot of other things. And I hope that at some point we get there. But until then, you know what I mean? My boy's got to be raised a certain kind of way.
And I have one more take on this. Sure. This is my personal opinion. I don't know. I haven't done any research in the studies. But most police, and I'm using my fingers to make air quotes again, the working police, they want to be in environments where they can work. All right? Unfortunately, those environments where there's a lot of work to do, meaning there's a lot of crime, is generally our area. All right? So they want to work there because they know it's always something to do, it's always work to do. But I also believe, and this is just my opinion, not the opinion of the police department.
Right. For sure.
I don't represent them here.
Yeah.
But when we're looking many times at white officers who work the ghetto, they aren't but a generation, maybe two, out of poverty themselves. So they want to work in an environment because remember the police department, this was the Irish man's job. This was the poor Irish boy. This was his job. So I think whether again it's conscious or unconscious, I don't know, but to work in environments, because I'm not but a generation or two out of poverty myself, I want to work in an environment where I feel like I'm better than somebody, because I used to be the poor white trash. But I want to work in an environment that makes me feel better about me. Right. I can only do that if I can work in environments that allow me to keep my foot on somebody's throat.
Interesting. Yeah, I won't go any further than that.
Thank you very much.
That's enough. So let's get into the men of purpose, the journey of self-discovery. When did you actually start the organization, and what was the trigger to starting that organization?
I launched it in September of 2016, and probably even again going back to the times of coaching, I'd always been involved in kids' lives, young men. But there was this pull from God that I said, man, it's something more I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know what. And so I'm a firm believer in sometimes you have to travel places to get information. Mm-hmm. And so I was going to conferences, and I'd gone to this conference in Omaha, Nebraska called Shake the Nations. And while I was there, something hit my spirit. I said, okay. A few months later, I went to another conference in Nassau, Bahamas. Boom, something hit my spirit. So it was going into all these places as we go back to my earlier statement about connecting the dots. And then one day, the name just came to me. And when it clicked, I'm like, boom, this is the thing I'm supposed to be doing. But it's also the thing I've been preparing to do for the past 25 years, working with boys.
Right.
It just kind of, it morphed into something different.
Mm-hmm. And so is the purpose of the organization in line with your own personal purpose, or is that those two purposes separate?
Nope, they wasn't the same.
Okay. And so what's the purpose of the organization?
I'm going to say our mission is to teach, train, and motivate a band of young men who are self-sufficient, purposeful, and productive changes worldwide. And this, if we bring it full circle, goes back to our very first point, that everything has a purpose. Mm-hmm. Nothing is by accident. This table has a purpose. Chairs have a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Mm-hmm. You and I also have a purpose, right? So it's teaching young men to discover that purpose. Mm-hmm. One of my mentor, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, he would always kind of make this quote, say, many of us go to jobs that we don't like, working with people that we can't stand, getting paid less than what we're worth, and we're miserable. Mm-hmm. But why are we miserable? We are essentially miserable because your gift is trapped on somebody's job. There's something that you were born to do that you can't do because your inner man is saying, hey, let me out to do this thing. And you like, hey, we need this check. Shut up.
Right.
And so I said, how great it would be to teach a person to discover their purpose. So now they can go to college, if you have to go to college, or get trades or certificates and whatever.
Yeah.
In whatever field that now allows you to serve your gift to the world.
Yeah.
The one of the things I picked up at that conference I was mentioning, Shake the Nation, was what they call the 7 mountains. Mm-hmm. Or these are the 7 spheres of influence, right? So it's church, government and politics, sports, media, entertainment, health, family and social services, and education, mm-hmm. right? These are the things that tell us how to think. Mm-hmm. So if you want to change the world, what you have to do is you have to start equipping young people when they're 4, 5, and 6 years old to go into those spheres of influence and change. Mm-hmm. So you help them
change themselves or change those. You can't. Go ahead, finish your point.
Well, you change it. So if I don't like the mm-hmm. way, for instance, I'll just use the education system is running. Sure. Then what I do is I take a 7-year-old, start training him to go infiltrate that system. So now he can start implementing. This is what, in a bad sense, this is what they do, mm-hmm. whoever they are.
Right.
They get involved in systems to infiltrate, to bring their agenda. Mm-hmm. Now, the only way you can change the system is you have to be inside the system as a policymaker.
Right.
So how do you get inside? You train somebody up at 5 or 6 years old, so now when he's 30, he's in the system making the policy. Mm-hmm. But you've been training him for that system since he was 5.
Right.
You think you're going to show up one day, say, you know what, I'm going to run for school board president. Great. Yeah. And you on the board. And it's just you. But you ain't got a clue how it works because you really ain't, it's just sad,
Right.
So I say we train them to discover their purpose so now they can go into these spheres of influence mm-hmm. and actually make change happen.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to take a deeper look in that because that is true. Like all of those things are all of those systems are set up in a way to push us into this funnel, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that this is why a lot of us don't begin to realize that we should be doing, that we're here for something completely different. We spend 10 years in corporate America or wherever we are because we're taught to get up, go to school, get a diploma, get a degree, and then go work for somebody else, mm-hmm. right? And there's nothing, I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with any of that. Some people have gifts that need to be in those environments. But largely, a lot of the people that I talk to, in terms of people that are in my circle that are in corporate America, are like fed up. It's like to the point to almost it makes them sick, like physically sick. Like, I don't want to get up. I'm not going. My stomach hurt. My head hurt. I don't want to do it because they're not really connected to it, and there's something in them. It's like, but you've already created this life for yourself,
right? And I think for me, because we've said that you are successful if you have a certain income, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then, for those that are going to school, they're going to school to get positions that pay well.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And so I say we have to get away. We need to start teaching kids to be significant and not successful. We have to teach them to make $1. I'm sorry. We have to teach them to make a difference and not $1. Mm-hmm. Right? So we have to change the narrative on what success is.
Right. I 100% agree. And
this is why I believe, because when you look at, I think the suicide rate, now again, this is just my personal opinion, no research on this, but doctors are pretty high in suicide. I think dentists are pretty high, and I believe pharmacists are pretty high. Now, by all measuring standard, those are successful professions. Why are they taking themselves out? My contention is they spent their entire life chasing a dream, got there, and realized they don't even want to do it.
Right.
But I can't quit now. Why? Because I get $500,000 in debt that they got to pay. Right?
Yeah.
So you know, how miserable does it have to be to spend your entire life chasing a dream to get it and realize, oh my goodness, this ain't even it.
Right. And you'll realize that the harder part to get through is realizing that was never your vision in the first place.
Yep.
Right? If you go back, if you start researching back and thinking about some of the things that you might have, when we talked earlier about the push and pull and those pricks, right? And you'll think about the times you were pricked in your side about doing a particular thing, and you're like, man, I kind of like it, but I can't, because how am I going to take care of 2 kids and a wife? How am I going to pay this mortgage? And there are ways to do those things if you just take the time to figure out what your gift is and how you can, because I'm learning that everybody likes to be around greatness. And I don't mean greatness in a way where it's like, you know, you got $100 million in the bank. Greatness to me is people that are living and moving they figured out their purpose, right? And so now they can have unmitigated conversations with you about that thing, right? So we can sit here and talk all day about purpose, about policy, about principles, because those are things that, you know, when it comes to your purpose in this organization, you can talk about those things when you wake up out of the bed. You don't need a briefcase. You ain't got to do no research. And I can feel that energy. Like, yeah, he's in it. This is what he does and what he does well. And so when you realize that you spend a large majority of your time following somebody else's instruction for your life, like, you're like, bruh, what in the world?
I was in the year 2017. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 2016. I was in Rwanda, and I happened to be talking to a group of students. And kind of went around the room beforehand and asking them, you know, what do you want to do? So, you know, I want to be a doctor because I want to, you know, cure, you know, Ebola. Okay, that's great. Next, I want to be a doctor because I want to find out why miscarriages happen. I want to do that. I want to be a doctor because I want to cure AIDS. And I'm like, man, this is great. I'm like, but all y'all not supposed to be doctors.
Right.
Chances are you following your mother's. No, that's a noble profession.
Yes.
But maybe you aren't. Don't follow somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
All right. I said, maybe you aren't designed to be a doctor. I said, maybe you're supposed to be a football player, which is what they call soccer.
Right.
You know, maybe you're supposed to be a football player. You change the world through the sport of football.
Right.
I said, maybe you're supposed to be the guy who works at the grocery store to stop her from stealing the bag of chips, and she goes on to become the president of your country.
Yeah.
You know, so
I think that's the difference between purpose and passion. And
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so how
be passionate about solving or curing AIDS. You don't have to be the exact person that does it. Your money, to some degree, could be the thing that helps somebody that's more skilled at it than you may have ever been, right? Because it's truly their purpose to do it, right? Nobody really told them that that's what they were supposed to be doing. They took heed to this pulling and this back and forth and said that this is my purpose, and it's your job to fund them to do that?
Brother, it's funny. I wish I could remember this guy's name, but it's not. There's a guy who had a love for the Lord, and he really wanted to go into ministry. So he had went to ministerial training, and they take this gift assessment, and like day one, it was like, you're not equipped to do this, man. This ain't your calling. You know, based on this gift assessment we gave you, you're supposed to be in the business work. And he said it broke his heart because he wanted to serve the Lord and he wanted to be in ministry. Yeah. But he went on to become a multi-billionaire. Now he gives millions of dollars to these organizations, right? And so, again, the thing that you're passionate to do may not be the thing that you're purposed to do. Yep. It could be your job, as you just mentioned, to fund those things. Yeah,
and that's ideal. And so that's why we have to consistently do the work on ourselves and ask ourselves the tough questions about who we are, what we want to do, and the impact we want to make on the lives of people that exist in the world with us, right? And so we talk about a lot of things, in terms of issues as it pertains to men that we're attempting to solve. We talked about fatherlessness, responsibility and accountability, masculinity and toxic masculinity, being good husbands, right? To name a few, and we've tackled a few on this show, but there's some I would like to go deeper into, in this episode and a couple of other episodes down the road. But what's your perspective on masculinity and toxic masculinity?
Oh my,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The idea of masculinity, what makes a man has been distorted, and we can go back to that earlier. Is talking about the provision and so forth and so on, right? Because there are several cornerstones, which I believe make up the appropriate man. And so to find out what a man is supposed to be, then it's always important to go back to the original. And so this is what when we talk about purpose, right? What is purpose? Purpose is the original intent, why something exists. This is the why of the thing. So if I am going to use as a blueprint for men what it should be, then I'm going to look at when the first man was created and say, I'll look at Genesis, right? And so if I look at that scripture, when it said God took the man and he placed him in Eden. Eden is I'm not going to get super spiritual here, but I'm going to try and break it down. You don't mind, do you?
No, let's go.
So Eden.
I own this. Ain't nobody shutting us off.
Okay, the FCC ain't coming?
No, it ain't coming. It ain't coming. Speak your mind, brother.
So Eden is, what I've learned is it's a very unique word. It is 5 different strokes of the pen in Hebrew. It means spot, moment, present, open door, and access. All right? So the very first place that God placed man was in a spot. At any moment, he could have an open door and access to him. So the very first place that he placed man was in his presence. So for a woman, the very first place she should find a man is in the presence of God. The second thing he says, he didn't allow man to find the garden. He said he took man and placed him in his presence. Then he said, then he told man to work. The word work doesn't mean to do something. It means to become yourself. And so this is a man who's in his presence. This is a man who's becoming himself. Then he told the man to cultivate the garden. Cultivate means you bring out the best of, right? Then he tells man to keep the garden. That's tended. Now, we also have to remember that all these commands were given to man, right? So it is man's job to also keep his command, but teach his command. And fast forward a little bit. So at the end of that, he said, it is not good for this man to be alone. What man is that? The man who's in his presence, the man who's working, the man who can cultivate you, the man who can keep his command, the man who can teach his command. If he is not that man, it is good for him to be alone. So when a woman is searching for a man, and I always tell girls this, young girls, these are the 5 qualities you should look for in a guy. Are you better when you leave his presence or worse?
Man, go ahead. Yep.
I'm like, if you, especially this, we'll go for grown women now. If you are on the path that God wants you to take, and you need to leave the path to go in the bush and grab a guy to try to drag him back, wrong dude.
Yeah.
So for every woman, those are the 5 qualities.
and I don't want to cut you off because we're going to a really good place, and we're gonna get into some other things. But it's interesting that you said that, because I think, and this may just be me, I'm writing something now for a later episode, but I remember a time when I was younger where I felt like if I was dating a girl, right, and it didn't work out for whatever reason, and I would see her again, I would be looking to see how well she was doing. And if she was doing worse, it would make me feel better about myself.
Look at you.
Right? Right? And then I got to thinking about now where I am today, I realized how immature that was, because where I am today, anybody that I choose to put in my life, whether it works out or not, I want that person, I should be in a place where my impact to them should be long lasting, right? So when you were with me, like, I should have put you in a place where you should not have digressed, right? You should be better, or at least at the same level. So I should not be looking for, and I shouldn't use what I said before as an indication of my value, right? The worse you're doing, the better I feel. When it's the better you're doing, I was a part of that better, right? And so it's like, it's interesting that you said that, because I'm actually, like, the way that I'm thinking about how I add value and what my value is in that perspective. I want to be in people's lives for a reason. Like, I don't just want to be there as a pole. Like, I'm here, you know.
That's the way you design. You are naturally designed. That's the way God designed you to be a cultivator. Yeah. Everything should leave your presence better. This is why I always say, and thank God I'm not married. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, we're going to get into that real quick.
Get thee behind me, Satan.
And you've never been married?
I was.
Okay.
But I was married when I was 21, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Okay.
So I think by 22, I was done.
Yeah.
But he designed you to be a cultivator. That's the way you're equipped, right? Yeah. Everything should be better because you were there.
Right. Yeah.
Everything.
And so, what's your idea of toxic masculinity? Or is that a thing? Is that just another term that's being thrown out there to get us away from being masculine beings?
No. Okay.
Is there a such thing as toxic?
It is.
Okay.
But I mean, there's a difference between maybe being a male, and masculine. All right. And so I think if we're going to use the term toxic, that is the thing that poisons the environment, right? And so when we talk about a man who is toxic, then generally what we have is a guy who God gave you a bigger bone structure, right? Why? To protect the woman, not abuse her, right? So a toxic man is taking the gifts that God gave you and flipping them on his head, right? So you now become abusive to the woman. Instead of cultivating her, you tear her down. Instead of protecting her again, you violate her. Instead of her finding you in his presence, he got to find you at the dope spot, right? So that's taking the things that God naturally gave you and flipping them. But I also think that things for men shifted, right? So the things that used to make a man no longer makes him a man, right? So it was, and in this country, I think World War II changed that. So in the 40s, it all changed. Right. Because the men went off to fight the war. When they got back home, the women had their jobs. And the woman said, I'm not going back home. Right. And he was like, oh, okay, now what? So who's going to raise the kids? Oh, the government said, don't worry about it. We're going to create a program. You can drop them off every day. And so now government started taking the place of man. You used to be the protector. Well, she got her own gun now. She don't need you to protect. Are you the man? Well, you used to be the provider. Well, she makes more than you. Are you still the man? You know, so the things that the gender roles that we used to have that we say made us men, those things have been reshaped and redefined. And if that was the standard that made you a man, now that we no longer have that standard, you feel less of a man. Right. So now what do you do?
What do you do?
Well, then now we turn to the abuser, because I still have to find a way to assert myself. So when we talk about men being the head, right? And so when we think of head, we think of you lord over. Here's the truth. The strongest place in this house, we in it right now, the basement, it's the foundation, right? Contractual engineers pour millions and millions of dollars into foundations of buildings. You know, if every window in this house was broken out, the city would still let you live here. If the roof had a crack in it, it still let you live in. The paint could come off the walls and the lights couldn't work. The city said you could still occupy it. But if there's a crack in the foundation, they render it unoccupiable. Men are the foundation. So the foundation carries the weight of the entire structure. So if we want to fix any problem in this world, you fix the man. If you ask any woman in this world, what is your number one problem? She's going to say some man or some man who used to be has caused all my problems. Men are the foundation, and we're cracked. So because we're cracked, nothing else stands. And so when we talk about the toxicity of it, if you seal the crack, if you repair the foundation, things are designed to be in a certain order, right? A woman, and they do great jobs. Single mothers do wonderful jobs, but they aren't designed to carry the weight. And so the problem is women are carrying a weight that they weren't built to carry because the men are absent. And that could be a slew of reasons why they're absent. Right. But we're absent.
They're not there, right? So we got to be more accountable and more responsible for the houses that we're building.
Yes.
Right? And that's effectively it. When you decide to plant your stake in the ground, literally and figuratively, right? Own it. And do what you can at that point to make sure that foundation is good and continue to grow in a place where if it does crack, you know you're going to do your best to fix it, right? It's not somebody else's responsibility to come in and fix the crack in your house, because as soon as somebody else comes in, and it will be another man, right? Well, in today's society, we don't know.
Don't know.
We don't know who coming in, but if somebody else comes in to fix that foundation, the woman upstairs might decide, well, if they can fix the foundation and you didn't do anything,
what I need you for.
What I need you for, right? And sometimes the government is the person that comes in and fixes that crack, and it causes contention in the household. But that's a whole nother conversation. So what are you actually teaching the boys that participate in your program, about masculinity, about being men? You know, it's that whole journey to self-discovery. Like what's your whole methodology?
Okay. I'll be honest, a lot of times it's very little teaching, all right? And the reason I don't do a lot of teaching, I think twofold. One, they always say no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So my first piece is simply being consistent. So I make sure I go to the school a couple times a week. I sit in a class. We hang out. Two things.
How many boys are in your program right now?
I have about 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the process through the program is from what age to what age? Like, how do you?
The goal was to start them all in fourth grade and walk with them from fourth grade all the way through high school.
Okay.
So every year when they matriculate, so when I started with my group of fourth graders, when they matriculated to fifth grade, I picked up another group of fourth graders. So each year you pick up another group. So the group that I started with in fourth grade, they're now in sixth grade. My goal is to, by the time they get to eighth grade, assign them to a mentee. So now I would have had 4 years of pouring into them, and now they can start with a fourth grader themselves, right?
Right.
To start this
self-sustaining system.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of the kids who are broken, it's going to take you about 2.5 years to even get through to them, because they've been disappointed by so many other people, right? So me coming through the door day one trying to teach you something, they're not trying to hear it. They're going to test you to see why. They're not going to let you in because they're thinking you're going to probably bail like the last two dudes that was with their mama bail. And so for me, and this is why I don't like the term mentorship. I prefer the word discipleship because it's really about life on life. So if it's this weekend, I'm not doing nothing, I'm going to pick up 3 or 4 boys. We're going to run to the bank. Okay, I got to do some things for the dogs. I need to go pick up some bales of hay. So I'm really doing life on life with them. But 2 things I try to do with them every time I see them. 1, I read to them. because again, I said, how many of them have never seen a black man with a book? All right. I've read an article many years ago, and I really need to go back and look at it. It's either the University of Kentucky or University of Kansas, something with a K, but they had done a study called a 30 million word gap. And they talked about the number of words that I'm trying to stop using the word poverty. I like the word resource deprived. So the resource deprived kids here versus the number of affluent kids here. And they talked about there's this 30 million word gap that the affluent kid hears more than a resource deprived kid. So me reading to them is in part trying to fill that gap. 2, I want them to see a black man read so they can understand that you can do this. It's okay. And the other thing I do is I try to hug them, which is becoming increasingly difficult in the CPS system, I'll be honest, because they're creating this this narrative where you can't touch. Yeah. I'm like, well, how do you love? And then you want him to grow up to be a man, right? To love on his kids, but he don't know how. You want him to love on his wife, but nobody showed him. Right. And so I wanted to hug them because I said, all right, I want them to know, 1, there's a man who loves them. 2, I said, how many of them have never had the touch of a man that wasn't physically or sexually abusive? So I want to try and give that to them. So they say, okay.
Right. So you know the difference.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just that kind of it. I mean, it struck a chord because it's like when you said that, it's like when I think about another man hugging my boys in today's environment, it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? It makes it hard because there's a lesson to be taught there. Like you have to teach them the difference between the sexually or physically abusive touch opposed to being touched in a way that somebody loves you and means you no harm in either way. And it's like in today's society, we're on either ends of the spectrum. There is no middle ground. Yeah. And so those conversations are necessary amongst teachers, amongst the system, and the parents that put their kids in those systems, right? And it's just all broken, and it's sad. But no, it's very interesting, and I definitely need to pay a little bit more attention to what's being taught there. And so it's interesting you bring up, or you've brought up being a husband and teaching them how to understand how a boy can grow to understand how he's supposed to treat a woman and marry her and how he's supposed to treat her. So you aren't currently married now, but you said that you were previously married. Like, if that's something that you feel is necessary, teaching a boy to grow up and be a man and be a good husband by whatever definition you believe that is, why haven't you walked down that alley again?
Okay, I'm gonna get there. Sure, but here's a key point too. This is why I no longer I think I say that I don't even know if fatherlessness is an issue anymore. Because I don't think we're teaching boys not to be good fathers. We're not teaching them to be husbands, right? And so we're teaching that what makes you a good father is if you spend time with your kids, take them to a ball game and pay some child support, you're a good father. But husbandry isn't taught in our community. Now, why aren't I married? I'll be honest. Maybe I don't want to be that honest. I think for a long time it scared me. All right, and it probably still scares me. Probably more so now because I understand the weight of that thing, right? And this is why any man who's talking about getting married, it should scare you to death. If you understand the weight of what that means, baby, bye. You say absolutely not. And so up until this point, and for many years in my life, I was a good guy, but I wasn't a good dude, So it was like, and I may be telling on myself, but I've always been a great friend, but I'm a horrible boyfriend. Like I'm the best friend ever. Right. Worst boyfriend on the planet. Yeah. Commitment. But I don't even think it's commitment because here's why. I didn't set boundaries. Okay, so inside of my relationships, The qualities that you love about me as a friend, when we were friendly, you hate when we're dating. Because you love the fact that whenever you called me, I was coming. That if you needed something, I was going to do it. Because we were friends. This is just what I'm going to do for you because I love you as my friend. But now we start dating, you don't want me to be that friend to other people.
Oh.
And so that's what I'm saying. The qualities that you like about me when we're friends,
yeah,
you hate when we're dating because I'm still friendly like that to other friends.
Right, but that should change, though.
It should. This is my point. Point. I never set the boundary.
Okay.
And so what I realize is that when I am dating someone, she should be special. I shouldn't give her what I give everybody else. But part of maybe my toxic manhood was like, I ain't gonna let no woman change me. I'm gonna be this who I am, and she can accept me for who I am. Shut up, fool. So
yeah.
I've probably ruined a lot of good women because I was selfish in my way. But right now, why I'm not married? Yeah, because I'm not. I don't even have a reason.
Yeah.
No excuse.
I mean, it could be the institution of it, right? Because there's a lot of things you can still have a successful, committed relationship without necessarily putting on a ring. Or going and standing in front of somebody and letting them tell you that, you have this union. Different strokes for different folks. But I think the level of commitment is still the same. You're absolutely right.
And I'm selfish. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I like coming home and ain't nobody there. I like my bed to myself.
Right.
I like using the bathroom with the door open. I love that.
You're right. So here's the $1 million question. How do you teach how to be good husbands if that's not what you're I'm going to use the word desire loosely, but if that's not your desire.
Oh, it's my desire. You just ain't got to it yet. I'll be honest.
Okay, so you're working on your selfishness.
I desire
is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
But see, here's the thing: you have to be honest with yourself. And so I know for me, those aren't things that I want to let go of yet. Right. And so if I know that if I got married, the only way you can get married is when you no longer want to do the things you used to do. But I like my bed to myself, man. And so if I'm honest with myself, I wouldn't want to share my bed. Right. I like coming home and nobody's there. I have to be honest with that. And so if I were to get married, and a lot of people do, and 4 or 5 years down the road, you'd be like, man, I'm miserable. I ain't happy. Why? But you knew going through the door that you weren't really there. And you were just hoping that inside of it that you would change. Right. And so, right now I'm still selfish.
So what are you teaching the boys about being good husbands? Seeing as though you aren't one at the time, at right now. So what are you, like, what's the thing that you're teaching them that you think will eventually get them to a place to where they can make a really good decision about whether or not they want to be one?
Right now,
I think that's what matters.
Well, right now they see me being a good boyfriend. All right. Okay. So that's step number one. So they see me operate inside the confines of a relationship. Okay. Right. Because she's around my boys fairly often, so they see how we communicate, how I treat her. They see how she's able to help me. One of the things I constantly stress, that we don't even talk about fatherlessness, right? So even when I talk to them, it's like, oh, well, when you get married, and I never talk about when you have kids. It's when you get married.
When you get married, right?
And so part of it is modeling the behavior as a good boyfriend. The second piece is, so they come to my house all the time. So I want them to see how a household functions. So even when we sit down to eat, I try to make sure, that we sit down to eat as a group. Right. So even, to your point that you don't have to be married per se, but also just having the image that this man doesn't have women running in and out of his life. He's consistent in what it is he's doing. And I think at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for, consistency.
Right. So we definitely went over a little bit of time, but I got a few more things. I don't want to be I want to be mindful of your time as well.
Yeah, fine.
The thing I want to get into, you have some perspectives on. I just want to kind of go back a little bit in terms of purpose. What are the points or the cornerstones to finding your purpose?
Okay.
This is the secret sauce you were talking about earlier.
Again, honesty with yourself, right? One of the things that people say all the time, well, the answer is in you. Well, if the answer is in me, I wouldn't be asking the question. But there are several questions you have to ask yourself, right? So when I said purpose is on the inside of you, waiting to be discovered, meaning everything is already there. So I believe that that we either assign to a person or a group of people. Mm-hmm. So you have to find out who or what you are assigned to. I also believe purpose can be geographical, right? There are businesses that don't do well here. They will move 5 miles down the road and flourish. Why? You just wasn't in the right spot. Mm-hmm. So the first thing to find out who or what you are assigned to is you say, whose pain do I feel? Like, whose tears move you and whose enemies are you willing to confront? That is a clue to who or what you are designed to solve. Everything solves a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Your phone solves a problem. Glasses solve a problem. Shoes solve a problem. Everything solves a problem. Mm-hmm. What problem do you solve? So you find out what problem you solve by asking yourself that question. Whose pain do I feel? Whose tears move me? Whose enemies will I confront? And again, I always use the analogy of, like, I don't want to see a baby seal get clubbed. Mm-hmm. I don't. But if it did, I'm not going to lose any sleep. Mm-hmm. But there are some people that breaks their heart. That's a clue of a problem you're designed to solve. The second question I tell people often to ask themselves, what are you jealous of? Right? Now, say jealousy isn't a bad thing. It's one side of a two-sided coin. One side is jealousy, other side is desire. The thing that you are jealous of is the thing that you secretly desire, but you're too free to go after it. Don't believe you deserve it. Mm-hmm. One of the other questions I tell people to ask themselves is, what did you get in trouble for as a kid? That nobody had to tell you what to do. Nobody told you to do this thing. You just did it.
Like wrestling a lion? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like you come downstairs, man, and your son and took your Mac apart. You hide his fish grease.
Oh, yeah.
And this is generally what happens. Our kids' purpose conflicts with our pocketbook, right? Your kid and he's taking this Mac apart, taking his you taking the belt off, you whooping him. Mm-hmm. What you doing it? Nobody but there was something on the inside of him that says, man, let me figure out how this thing works, right? Mm-hmm. So again, maybe he's supposed to be an electrical engineer. Maybe he's supposed to be a surgeon. There was something on the inside of him that says, let me figure out how this thing works. Mm-hmm. So it's the thing that you did as a kid that nobody told you what to do. What's my fourth question? Jealous? I'm having a brain fart on my other question. Yeah. But once you ask yourself, and again, none of these are in and of itself the answer. Mm-hmm. But these are pieces to the puzzle that you could put together. And at the end of the day, no one knows a product better than the manufacturer. So if I want to know how I function, I have to go ask the one that made me. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows Ford better than Ford. Nobody knows this iPhone better than Apple.
Yeah.
So if I ain't even go there. But if I want to know how it functions, right, I got to contact the manufacturer and say, hey, how does this thing function to its maximum potential?
Gotcha. So before I get into this last question, how can we support the organization if there are people that know that they have kids that want to be, that need, mentorship and be a part of the program? Where can we find you? How do we reach out? How do we support if we wanted to support financially? How does all of that work?
Well, you can go to the website mopjourneytoselfdiscovery.org, mm-hmm, or you can and on the website there's a contact button. You can put your information in. It goes right to my email, or you can just email me at uncoveredpurpose@gmail.com. Although I generally try not to take boys that are older than the crew I got now. Mm-hmm. So if you have a 4th, 5th, or 6th grader, they fit right in my core right now. Okay. Because those are the group ages I have right now.
And what's your capacity in terms of kids? You said you have 30 now. Mm-hmm. Do you have a capacity or limit where it's like, I can't really get to everybody the way that I want, right? So, because I imagine unless you have partners, it's just you.
Yeah, it's me right now.
Right. Moving through this.
I'm sure I have a capacity. I haven't reached it yet.
Okay.
Generally, this is how it works. So we meet twice a week. On Mondays, we meet at Gresham Elementary School from 4 to 5. On Wednesdays, we always meet outside somewhere. So I have the bulk of my boys come from Gresham, but I probably have about 7 or 8 other boys that don't go to Gresham, but they meet us because they can't come on Mondays. But they meet us every Wednesday at our location. So normally we'll do last year we did the 6th District Police Station on 78th and Halsted. If it's warm outside, we'll do the Forest Preserve or we'll do Woodson Library. On Wednesdays, I try and take them somewhere else. So for those who can't make it because it's directly after school, 4 to 5, then they're more than welcome to get in contact with me, bring their boy out. I probably, to a fault, never going to tell someone no, which is probably pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Because
you got to find that limit.
Yeah, I do.
Or find some help.
Right. But there's an influx of kids. Because before we close, here's what I didn't realize. The challenge that I have that I didn't think I was going to have. Like when I went to grammar school, I live in a home. So I went to the same grammar school from kindergarten through 8th grade. But I realized that's not the structure of homes. So like now, so I'm losing kids every year. Because this year he's living with grandma. Next year he's living with auntie. So he's changing schools every 2 or 3 years. So I thought the kids that I would start with in 4th grade, I'd be able to stay with them. Yeah. It's not the case in some of them.
Yeah. That's got to be pretty tough because it breaks down.
Yeah, but I still stay in touch with them even when they transfer. I think even one young man I was with yesterday, he doesn't go to the school, but he transfers from the school. But I try and stay in contact with all my boys even when they leave.
So you go 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and you go what through 8th? Is that which?
Well, I'm going to go all the way through high school.
So
right now, the crew I started with in 4th grade, they're only in 6th.
Right.
So next year, then I'll have 7th grade, then 8th grade, and we'll keep going like that. Gotcha. And by then, I'll have some more men.
Yeah. Yep. That'll come back and pour into
absolutely
the organization. So my last question is, give me 3 things that you're currently doing to become a better version of yourself.
That's funny you ask. Because right now I'm doing I call it pies, right? I'm doing a 90-day challenge. I'm probably on day 78. And so
PIE stands for
physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. So every day I have to do something in each of those categories to make me grow. Okay. So whether that's some push-ups, so today I am, working out intellectually, so every day I have to read something. Emotionally is every day I have to connect with another person in my circle to check in, like, hey, how are you feeling? Not just a generic, hey, what's going on, how you doing? But like really like, no, how are you feeling today? And then spiritually, connecting with my maker. So every day I do something in those 4 areas to make sure I stay grounded.
So you're eating your pie, you're getting your sweets every day.
I'm getting every day.
Yeah. Okay. So those are I guess those are the 3 things. Well, it's actually 4, but that's what you're doing to better yourself. So, and I think that's dope. I'm gonna do something here in the next month, next couple of weeks, that's similar in nature, and hopefully, because your 90-day challenge, you have how many? You're at 78, so you got you have about 2 more weeks to go.
All right. Then I'll probably start over again.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can align with some of that as well, but. I absolutely appreciate you coming through.
I appreciate you
and chopping it up with us, and giving us some of that secret sauce. Even though you forgot the last question.
Yeah, when I think of the question, man, I'm probably famished. I'm probably famished. I work nights, man. I didn't eat today, So.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't make that sandwich for you, man.
Right.
I got you next time.
We're trying to get the Dave Max sandwich over here today, but my man's slipping.
Yeah, I'm slipping, man. No mushrooms. But no, I appreciate you again, man, and thank you for coming out.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yep. As always, we appreciate you joining us on this journey to become a better version of ourselves. These candid conversations are meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you with something that you can apply to your own life or share with someone that you know needs to hear it. We would love to hear how these conversations are impacting you or the people around you. So do us a solid and head on over to the review section on iTunes or Stitcher and leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, I'm proud to announce that we recently released our very first high-quality coffee table photo book, Fatherhood Through the Eyes of Black Dads. This book tells a story of 8 dads and their experience with fatherhood using powerful images. Head on over to our website, awesomeblackdads.com, and click on the Projects tab for more information. You can follow us on all social media at Awesome Black Dads, and we'll see you next episode. Peace.